Okay, the recording in progress. Now, let me share my PowerPoint. So guys, can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Okay, great, great. Okay, today we are going to talk about two skills of four language skills, listening and speaking. So who want to tell me what's the difference between receptive and productive skills? Do you have any ideas which ones are receptive and which ones are productive between these four?
Listening is receptive and speaking is productive.
Bravo, bravo, exactly. And what's the difference between receptive and productive?
So receptive is something that you're receiving from the external, from an external thing, and then production is something that you produce.
Bravo. Receiving the knowledge,
Yes.
producing the knowledge.
Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, before we start, uh, somebody's talking.
Needs it. My God, Scott. So you're not, I have to take him.
Tanya, are you talking to us or you have to mute your microphone?
They're just listening to everything.
Okay, good. So I want you to guess, what can you see? What is it? It's a warm-up. Oh, I'm sorry. Say that again. Come on, make a guess.
Glass.
It's
You think it's a glass? Good. Thank you, Dorothy.
it seems like an X-ray of some sort.
X-ray, sky. Oh, good. What about now? It's bigger.
Seems like a glass.
Cloud. What about now?
A crystal ball.
Okay. Crystal ball.
Water. Like a water drop.
Now.
A light bulb.
Oh, that's a light bulb. Yeah, exactly. That's it. That's a light bulb. So, what is it? At the beginning of the class, you just have something to engage the students. They just like, it's a good start. I mean, they like the activity. Maybe it's not very related to the lesson, but it gets the attention. Students start to talk. It's not very difficult, so everybody can participate. We call it, what do we call this stage? Start with W. At the very beginning of your class.
Warm up.
Warm up, exactly. Warm up, that's it. Warm up. So warm up is maybe it's not related to the lesson. Just you want to build up rapport, engage the students, get their attention. That's the aim of the warm up. Okay, so today we are going to discuss what are receptive and productive skills based on listening and speaking. Okay, I'll already ask you what's the difference between receptive and productive. So as you know, through listening and reading, your students receive the lesson, the new information, the knowledge, and through speaking and writing, they produce what they have learned. So basically, listening and reading are receptive skills, and speaking and writing are productive skills. But is it possible one session you only teach listening based on the definition that we have for receptive and productive? Is it possible you only work on listening or you only work on speaking? What do you think? For example, let me put it in another word. So for example, instead, okay, for 30 minutes, I just practice listening. Is it possible? Yes or no?
Yes, I think it's possible.
Okay. So how can you understand your students have learned or have understood listening if you don't get the feedback? So they need to talk to you, yes? They need to talk to you. You have to ask them some questions about the listening, and they are going to answer back. Do you agree?
Yes.
Sure. So that we call it integrated skills. Means that the interactions of four main language skills all together during your teaching or giving instructions or during practicing what's happening in the class shows these four skills are always integrated. So even when you focus is on listening, but you get back through speaking or writing, or you're working on writing, but they need to listen to something. They need to read something to write about it. So that's integrated skills. It's impossible to teach one skill solo, only that skill. It's impossible. Is that clear to everyone?
Yes.
And no questions so far then. I'm sorry, I cannot see if you write something in the chat box, I cannot see it. I'm sorry. So thank you for talking. Now, here's a question. Why is listening important in teaching the language? What do you think?
Because when we are listening carefully, we
Sorry, uh, I cannot hear you anymore. So guys, can you hear her?
No.
No.
because
Uh-huh.
when we are listening carefully, we understood new words, new sentences, and it helps us to improve your English language.
Bravo. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Oh,
Any other ideas?
It helps with pronunciation and the speed of talking and tones.
Thank you. It helps. Yeah, definitely. Through pronunciation, intonation. Yes, exactly. It helps a lot. Very good. Very good. So normally, people who speak well listen well. How children learn the language? How do children learn their first language?
Through interaction with the adults and other family members around them.
So they need to listen. Actually, they listen for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So that's basically we learn language. Naturally, we learn language through listening. So it's good to encourage our students to listen to the new language a lot. And definitely, when they start to listen, it's good to listen to different accents. For example, for English, it's good to listen to American accent, Canadian accent, Australian accent, British accent, New Zealand accent. So in this way, they catch and understand the language better because they can get familiar with two different accents. What is next is after listening for a while, it's good to repeat. So shadowing. Do you have any ideas what's shadowing? What's shadowing method? If no ideas, just say no.
To speak with the speaker, but like 1 second behind.
Yes, thank you. That exactly. Shadowing is they listen to the short part, then take a pause and try to pronounce it, try to say it exactly the same. Maybe they listen to one sentence two, three, or even five times, but they do their best to pronounce it with correct pronunciation and intonation and stress. So that's shadowing. So it works if they listen to the listening, and it should be the level of difficulty should match to the level of their past, to level of the knowledge of the language. For example, if they're elementary, definitely if they listen to the news, they can't catch anything. But it's good to listen to podcasts, easier podcasts. So this is the job of the teacher. This is the work of the teacher to find proper podcasts for the student based on their level of their knowledge of the language. So they listen to the podcast first 2 or 3 times. They get the idea. They comprehend what is the message of this podcast. Then number two, step two is they listen, pause, to one, two, or maybe three sentences. It depends to the students. And take a pause and try to repeat with correct stress, correct intonation, and correct pronunciation. That we call it shadowing. It makes them very fluent and accurate in their speaking. It helps them a lot. There is another jargon that we call it active listening. Do you have any idea what is active listening, or can you guess what it means? Active listening.
So I explained to my elementary school students it's like a full body listening. So your posture is faced towards the speaker, your eyes are looking at the speaker, your mouth is closed, and your ears are open. And it could be even like, if you're like active listening, there's lots of like head movement, like agreeing, or, your body is fully immersed in the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. That's really that works a lot because you give them complete instructions. So it's not only say something, but you can respond through your body language. That's nice. So you send a message and then you ask for the feedback. That is active listening. If just you send the messages and no feedback, it's like listening to mass media, to radio, or to TV. And so the result is, how do you know that they learn the language? Or how do they understand the message? That's impossible. We need to get the feedback. So even verbally, written, or they show that they understand. Like as Crystal said, am I right? Your name is Crystal?
That's right.
Yeah, okay. As Crystal said, that even they nod their head or facial expression, they show, oh, okay, they agree, they like it, they dislike it, or they have another ideas. In your online classes, you can ask them to show you signs. For example, red circle means I have questions, I don't understand it, or green circle means okay, I agree, I got it. Even showing signs or images. Let me see if I my image. No, I don't have the images here. So they can say it or through gestures or I don't know. So that's good. Just get the feedback. This is active listening. While we are teaching listening, so we need to get the feedback. We talk skills are integrated. So always think when you're planning for your lesson, always think how to get the feedback for the listening part. They receive the message. You need to check with them that they have understood it. Then you need to evaluate how well they got the message. They need to practice to remember and respond back. So you play the audio part, they receive it. How do you check how well they have understood? Through how can you check with your students that they have understood the message or the audio part?
Ask them questions or ask them to repeat.
We call it C
Huh?
CCQ. Yes, we call it CCQ. CCQ stands for do you have any idea CCQ what does it stand for?
No.
Concept checking questions. So remember, because you see this almost in all teaching books, CCQ, concept checking questions. We need to ask them some questions or we need to prepare some activities to check how well they understood the message, they understood the information. So you need to concept check during your class all the time, from beginning to the end. You can ask questions. You can have some games in the class. You can ask them to repeat in lower levels. You ask them to repeat the sentence. It's not only for listening, for all the skills. Concept checking is for everything. You just check your student got the message. Or you can ask them to write something for you, or doing some exercises, fill in the blanks and write the answers to the questions, order the jumbled sentences. So it could happen in different ways. Concept checking questions, CCQ. So just asking them any questions and they look at you or say no, it's not enough. Through an activity, we have to check that they really learn or they've really learned the new lesson. Again, a bit later, you need to evaluate your students. So how can you evaluate your students? How well they can remember or how well they can use the new target language? How can you evaluate? Any ideas?
Do quiz, dictate.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
We practice a lot.
Yes, bravo, bravo. Very good. Give them exams. Yeah, that's it. Exams, that's what it works. Quizzes, exams. Mhm. Or even ask for projects to do. Bravo, bravo. And check how well they can remember and they can answer. Good job. So listening could be in different form, even the sounds, or they listen to the lecture, or but during all of them, you work, I mean, all different kinds of listening. You work on tones, intonation, and even accents. So it's good they listen to different accents. So they receive it, they process it, you ask for the meaning, and also you ask for the vocabulary, new vocabulary, grammar, and linguistic part. It's not only comprehension, just get the meaning, the whole meaning. They need to learn the new vocabulary. They need to practice the grammar part also. So it could be monologue. They listen to a monologue like a lecture, academic lecture, or for example, interview on the street or job interview. So it could be planned or unplanned. The planned one, there's no redundancy, like lecture talking or interviewing, as I said, interviewing on the street, job interviewing, so it's unplanned. So they listen to something that they have said, oh, these sentences are not related to the questions. They can evaluate that listening, for example. Or they listen to the dialogues. Maybe the subject is familiar, maybe it's unfamiliar. So there are different kinds of listening they have in their course during the course. But in the whole, you always need to CCQ, concept check. They've understood that listening, and also assess or evaluate your students, how well they have learned. But how do you start? When you want to teach, before showing this, when you want to teach, there are three main stages for teaching. What are those three main stages? We talk about it at conversation part. Conversation webinar we had. I said there are three main stages for teaching. Can you remember? One was pre, then stage one, pre, stage two.
So was it pre-active and then interactive and then post-active?
Post. Okay, thank you, Layla. So it was pre-teaching task, while teaching task, and post-teaching task. These are the three main stages of teaching. Pre-teaching task, while teaching task, and post-teaching task. So what happened in pre? Free from what you're teaching. What happened in pre-stage?
So you are planning?
No, it's not out of the class. It's right now you're teaching. Maybe you're teaching math, maybe you're teaching English, Arabic, Spanish, whatever you want to teach. So there are three main stages: pre-teaching task, while teaching task, post-teaching task, that you have to write it in process part in your lesson plan. So what happened in pre, you need to put your students in the context. We call it contextualization. So what happened? Why we put our students in the context?
So they know what the lesson plan is meant for.
Mhm. So why you have to actually? Why do you have to put your students in the context? It could happen in different ways, huh? Give them a chart so they see this is the chart that they're listening about or they're reading about, or asking them some questions or showing them pictures, or put the topic on the board and start talking about it. Describe the context and said, okay, you are going to listen to or you're going to read about something. You give them general idea about that title or context. Role play the situation. Even they can watch a short video about the topic. So all of the ways to put your students in the context, because when your students in the context, they can understand better. They start to think, they start to imagine what's going on. They become busy with the topic. So when they talk about it, when they think about it, they receive the new information better and easier, and they can understand it easier because they are in the context. Right now, since we are talking about how to teach, I started with asking some question about receptive skills, productive skills, and different kinds of skills. So you start to think about teaching. When I ask you more questions, you are in the context. So you have ideas to share. But all of a sudden, I start to talk about the new museum near my house. So what happened to you? So some topic that is out of the context. What happened to you? Can you share anything at once? When start talking about the museum near, actually there's no museum near my house, but imagine. Okay, start talking about the museum and the city. Just in the process of the webinar, listening webinar, or this webinar. So can you understand, or you just ask what's going on? Can you share your idea about the museum at the very
Sorry,
beginning?
can you say again?
Sure, sure. I said why it's important to put your students in the context. That's the question. Why is it important to put your students in the context? And my example was, during the webinar right now, I start talking about some topics out of the context, like talking about the museum in the city. So how do you feel when the topic pops up, which is not related to the context?
It's confusing and it's just not relevant to what's actually supposed to be being taught.
Yeah, exactly. So it's confusing. That's perfect. So your students become confused and they cannot follow up the stream of the class. They cannot share their ideas. They won't be engaging in the class activity because they're shocked and they were confused. So it's good to put your students in the context of the lesson. If the lesson is about shopping, so you start the class talking about shopping, showing stores. They watch the video about shopping. You put the title, the big mall in the city. So they start to think about shopping and places that they can go for shopping. So you put your students in the context. When they are in the context, they are open into new ideas and they can share their experience. So what happened in pre? Number one is put your students in the context. So you need to think how to put my students in the context of the title or the topic of the lesson. What about number two? To understand the context, there are some keywords. So we need to pre-teach the keywords. If our students don't know the keywords, they won't understand the context. So in pre-stage, we need to pre-teach the keywords. Why not all the new words? Why don't you teach all the new words and just keywords?
They cannot remember or understand all of the new words, and they might be frustrated and get lost.
Yes, thank you. Bravo. Besides, we need to give them a chance to guess the meaning from the context. We talked in previous webinars that we shouldn't spoon feed our students. Let them be creative and have critical thinking. So they need to think. They need to have a chance to guess the meaning from the context. As well, it's going to be very hard to learn 10 words at a time before the listening or before reading the context. It's very hard, definitely. So we only pre-teach the keywords. And what is the definition for keywords? Keywords means what?
I think special word.
Okay, like can you give me an example what you mean by special words?
I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. What
The important words that will help them understand the context. For example, you say we teach about shopping, so the key phrase is how much.
Bravo, like how much? Excellent, excellent, very good. Cost. Bravo, bravo, that's it. The keywords, or in some books you see block words, are the words that if students don't know those words, they won't understand anything out of the context. Let me give you an example. For example, the context is about how to make strawberry jam, okay? And your students don't know what's the meaning of strawberry and what jam means. They have no idea. Strawberry jams, they don't understand the meaning. Can they understand anything of the text? When you play the audio, can they understand anything? Or can they understand the message? What's it about when they don't know the meaning of strawberry and they don't know the meaning of jam? Can they understand it?
I think sometimes yes, understand when strawberry and jam is not important in the sentence,
Mm-hmm.
not necessary in the sentence.
When it's not important. What if the whole context is around the strawberry and jam? So they won't understand it because the whole context is about how to make a strawberry jam. So strawberry and jam are the keywords. Are the keywords. You need to pre-teach the keywords. You need to pre-teach, okay, this is a strawberry and this is jam. You show them, you bring up the picture so they understand, oh, so how to make this. Then they listen. But there are some words in the listening that they can guess, like cutting, chopping, adding, like boiling, so they can guess. As your friend said, they can guess unimportant words or not the keywords. Not the keywords, they can guess it. But we need to pre-teach the keywords. So once more, what's happening in pre? Number one, we put them in a context. Number two, we pre-teach the keywords. What is number three? For the listening, you need to give them an activity. You need to, like, asking some questions or give them some sentences to decide whether they're true or false, or fill in the blanks, ordering the pictures, ordering the sentences. Some exercises to help your students to concentrate better while they're listening. So we need to prepare some exercises to check their general comprehension. That happened in pre. Then you play the audio. What's happened next? You play the audio. So put your students in the context, pre-teach the keywords, prepare some activities, exercises to check their general comprehension of the listening, and play the audio. So you present. You can ask them, even predict. You play some sentences and stop and say, what will happen next? So in this way, you help them to concentrate. Predict what will happen next. So what's next? It depends. Are you working on intensive listening or extensive listening? Okay? So there are two listening format in that class: intensive listening and extensive listening. What's the difference between intensive and extensive? What's different? Do you have any ideas what's the difference? Intensive listening and extensive listening. Oops, sorry. If you don't have any idea, just type no, or just say, because I cannot see you.
Intensive is
I think
more volume. Oh, sorry.
Yes, Dhruti, what you said, I'm sorry, say that again.
can I say?
Sure. I cannot see your name. I'm sorry, I don't call you because I cannot see your name.
Maide.
Yes, Maide. Yes.
Maide.
Yeah.
I think intensive listening means when we are listening carefully, but extensive listening when we are not listening.
Okay. Thank you. But what about you, Dorothy? You wanted to say something.
I think extensive is it's about the topics. Listen to more about this topic. But intensive is like within 1 hour, you listen a lot.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Also, intensive, like the listening in their course books. So they have to learn the new words, the new grammar, they practice pronunciation, they practice intonation. Just understanding the meaning is not enough. Okay? Like as I said, audios in their books, in their course books. We call it intensive listening. In detail. They learn it in detail. Extensive, like general listening to news, to different podcasts, watching movie, and only they get the message of that listening. We have these two formats of listening in the class to help the students learn the language better. So extensive listening is for leisure time. Out of the class, it happens mostly because it's longer. They watch a movie or they listen to the audio story. That's extensive listening. For teaching, so here is, I have the definition. Intensive listening is the choice of teaching, recording and story, essay, and science essay, for example. Extensive, can you choose about a dialogue or different recording material to improve their listening. But for teaching pre-while post, back to that pre-while post. In pre is the same for both, either intensive or extensive. You have to put the students in the context. We start to talk about the topic, involve them with the topic. Then you need to pre-teach the keywords. And after that, give them an activity or exercise, like asking some questions, general comprehension questions, to help them to focus on the listening. So how can you help the students to focus listening? What can you do to help your student to concentrate better, focus on the listening? What strategy can you suggest?
Before listening, give them some questions so they have to find the answer.
That's it. Thank you. Bravo. Okay. Also, it's for extensive, usually it's better you find something interesting for your students, or even intensive. The very first step in your teaching was last webinar, we talked about it. Know your students, know their interests and hobbies. So it's good to make it relevant to students, to their interests. And also give them some background knowledge. If they're listening, if you have to teach a coursework and the listening is about different cuisines, about different countries, and they had no ideas, so it's good to give them the background knowledge. You can email them short video about different cuisine in different countries, so they have ideas when they come to the class. And asking some questions and using variety of activities. Definitely you help your students to focus better in this way.
Or we can, or the education that we give should be creative, I think.
The technique should be creative. You're right. You're right. Then when you present, thank you for sharing the ideas. When you present the listening part, there are different forms of listening. Listening and repeat. Okay? Listening and answer, like responsive. They have to answer to some kind of activity. Scan the material. Okay? Selective. For example, choose the correct picture. So they look at different pictures and listen and find the correct pictures. Or interactive, they listen to dialogue and then you ask them to practice that dialogue with each other. So there are different formats of listening you can practice in the class. It depends to the level. It shouldn't be very difficult and it shouldn't be very easy. Just one stage above their knowledge. I+1, not very easy, not very difficult. While you're practicing the listening, as I said, there are two approaches or there are two aspects we need to practice. We call it top-down, bottom-up. Top-down refers to the meaning. the comprehension part. You ask them some comprehension questions, or you give them some activities to check their comprehension, like ordering the sentences. They listen, they understand the message, then order the lesson, order the pictures, for example. They have to understand, they need to understand, they have to understand the listening to order it. So you check their comprehension. Bottom up is practicing the linguistic part, like vocabulary, they learn some new vocabulary, or grammar, to practice grammar, pronunciation, intonation, stress word in a sentence or stress parts of a word. So that is bottom up. When you design activities for your listening part, work on both approaches, top down and bottom up. Is that clear to all of you? I'm sorry. Is that clear? What's the difference?
Yes.
What's the difference between bottom up and top down? Back to those three stages: pre-listening, while listening, and post-listening activities. As I said, in pre-listening, it's the same for intensive and extensive. What was number one? Put your students in the
context.
bravo. Put your students, very good. Put your students in the context. What about number two?
Pre-teach keywords.
Exactly. Pre-teach the keywords. And number three, prepare some activities to help your students to focus better. You play the audio, your student listen. We get to the second stage, while listening activities. What happens in while listening is you need to practice with your students. So you practice on both top down and bottom up. You prepare some activities to check their comprehension. You check if they receive the message after listening. Also, you prepare some exercises to work on the linguistic part, like new words, new grammar structure, pronunciation, stress, intonation, accent, and everything. This happens both bottom up and top down for intensive listening. But for extensive listening, like watching movies, like listening to music, long lectures, and these things, you only work on top down. You only ask some comprehension questions because they listen to extensive listening to enjoy based on their interests. Maybe they listen to different things. So you only ask some comprehension questions. You only talk about the message of that listening. That is while you practice with your students. And you monitor them, you help them, you ask if they have more questions about the words, you check the other new words with the students. Just be sure they learn and they practice enough. You put them in pairs and groups, give them different activities, you monitor, you listen to them, and help them out. Then we get to the third phase that we call it post-listening activities. What happened in post-listening activities? You get the
Feedback.
Bravo. We get the feedback. Now's the part to evaluate your student, to assess your students, to reflect on your teaching. So it's not only test your student, but also reflect on your teaching. How well I did my job, how well my students learned the lesson. So we call it post or getting feedback. Is that clear? These three stages are clear for you?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Definitely, we need to give them some homework related to the lesson to practice at home, to review what they have learned in the class, and they can remember it better. So, top-down strategies. So they can say about the setting, they can talk about the topic, they can talk about mood of the speakers, main idea of the listening. You can even help them to predict what happened or give ideas about the topic, okay, and guess what's the story ends or guess the answers. They're all around their comprehension. In bottom up, also there are different exercises like syllables, stress, underline the stress part or circle the stress part, or listen to the word group. Also talk about the meaning, listen and shadow. Okay, they repeat the part exactly the same to practice on intonation. And even they focus on different accents as well as pronunciation. So lice, rice, similar pronunciation or different pronunciation, and like stress, interesting. So they clap, interesting, or you write the word interesting and say underline the stress per syllable, or intonation for WH questions or tag questions or to be questions. So these are different activities for bottom up, which works on linguistic parts. So we have both top down and bottom up, meaning and language for intensive. For extensive, just comprehension, just the meaning. And definitely intonation. I forgot to show you the definite intonation. So when they said, she is Mary, isn't she? Or she's Mary, isn't she? So what's the difference? The intonation rising or falling? What's the difference in the meaning? You practice intonation with your students. So everybody, do you have any questions for our listening part?
No, thanks.
Sure. Now let's get to speaking skill. Okay, when do you work on speaking skills in your classes? When do you work on speaking skills? Is it all the time or part of the class, at the beginning, in the middle, or at the end? When do you work on listening, on the speaking? Can you hear me? Because I cannot see your when the what if you type something, I cannot see it.
So is speaking an ongoing process? Like you're just practicing it all the time?
Bravo, that's it. All the
Mm-hmm.
time, from beginning to the end. That's
Mm-hmm.
it. Bravo, that's it. Good. But you practice. You speaking all the time happens in the class. But you practice some part of the class, you practice the speaking skill. There are different performances, like imitative. They listen, and the purpose is be more meaningful what they are talking about. Okay, they learn a function like let's, making suggestion. Let's go shopping. Let's go for a coffee. Let's play volleyball. Let's watch a movie. So they repeat let's to learn better. And but it can go step beyond the imitative. We call it intensive. They add some reason or more sentences. And also you work on phonological or grammatical aspects of the language. So they add some new structures to the sentence. Because, since, for, therefore, so using cohesive devices, for example, just make it longer. It could be responsive. You ask them some questions from the whole class and they answer. You put them in pairs, they ask each other different questions. Even it could be in form of dialogue. You give them a topic, they start to talk. Or we call it interpersonal. They start to discuss the topic with the whole class, or in pairs, or in small groups. So different performances of speaking skills happens in the class. Well, what about the sub skills of speaking? Accuracy and fluency are the main one. What's the difference between fluency and accuracy? What's the difference? Fluency and accuracy, what's the difference? You know, if you don't have any idea, just say no. So I will continue.
No, I don't know.
Okay, thank you. Fluency is a skill that your students talk the language with no hesitation, with no hesitation, with no pauses, fluently talking. That's fluency. Accuracy is, it refers to syntax and pronunciation. So they use correct structure, correct pronunciation, correct intonation. We call it accuracy. So how we practice in the class? We practice on both. In lower level, we help the students to become more fluent. So we prepare activities that help them to become more fluent. Little by little, when they get to higher levels, we need to focus on accuracy so they can use more words, more new words, variety of structures, correct pronunciation, correct intonation. So here they should learn when and where use the new word, appropriacy, or what functions. Here is a matter of register. We call it register, formal and informal speaking. The way that you speak with your friends is very different from the way that you speak to a manager. So what phrases, what idioms, or what structure you need to use in formal speaking, and which ones people use in friendly talking. So that's appropriacy. Also, body language of the target language. The body language of different languages definitely different. For example, we have some body languages in English, which is different in Arabic or in Spanish or in French. So it's good to learn. Your students need to learn. Can you guess how can the students learn the body language of the target language? How can we help our students to learn the body language of the new language?
They watch movie or observe the teacher.
Bravo, bravo. Podcasts, movies, and definitely teacher. Also, another sub skills of speaking skill is readiness. So let me give you an example. While the students are talking, they have a dialogue. So in natural talking, while you're listening to someone, there are some sounds or initiations or some words that you use to keep the conversation, to help this conversation keep going. Like, oh, really? Wow, I know. Ah, sorry. Really? Okay. So we need to teach them how to help the keep the conversation going. Not to stop the conversation. One is talking, the other one just listening. And then the second one is talking, the other one is listening. And say it's your turn. It's like robotic talking. Okay? It's not natural talking. What kind of activity you can have based on working on fluency, accuracy, and readiness and body language, even in warm up, as we talked, speaking skills starts from beginning to the end of the class. Even for warm up, you can make some warm up activities to practice their speaking. You can put some questions on the board, like go around in your face-to-face classes. In your online classes, you can put them in breakouts. And they said you can ask your friends about their nicknames, if they have any nicknames, date of their birth, place of birth, family members, educations, hobbies, or work, or their interests. So just start talking. When's your birthday? Do you have any siblings? Or what do you do in your free time? It helps their fluency a lot. Even in lower levels, they can ask some simple question. How many are you in the family? So from lower levels to higher levels, that's a good activity for warm up. In addition, you boost the rapport of the class. The students know each other and they feel more friendly and they feel more comfortable before, definitely. Back to the stages, pre, while, post in teaching and speaking. What happened in pre? You put your students in the context. You start talking, you can start talking about the topic. You can show them pictures. You can ask them to read the context about the speaking and then start talking. They can watch a movie clip, a short clip, or they can watch a short video and then start talking. So you put them in a context and to talk about that topic. Maybe they have to use some specific words. Maybe they have to use some functions. Maybe they have to use some structures. So you need to pre-teach the key words or the key structures that they need to use for that speaking. So put them in the context. Number two, pre-teach the words or the structure that they need to use. And number three, present. Give them the instructions. So what is the activity? And it should be very clear. Ask them some questions to check that they understand the instructions, ICQ, instruction checking questions. And put them in pairs, put them in groups, or maybe the whole class. It depends on the activity. Give them time to practice. So that was pre, then we get to while. It's a time to practice. You monitor your students, listen to them, help them out if they have any questions, and correct them during the while. And impose as a time to produce what they have practiced. They produce the dialogue, maybe they want to talk, or maybe they want to give a lecture, maybe they want to discuss. So they produce what they have already practiced. And you give the feedback and evaluate your students. Later, you give them homework to practice at home related to the aim of the speaking that they practice in the class. Is that clear?
Yes.
Good. So as we said in pre, elicit, picture talking, brainstorming, talking about the title, different things. In practice, if they need to use specific words, a specific grammar, you can put it on the board. And it said, while you are practicing, I want you to use these expressions or these words. Like these days, at the moment, or if, or using cohesive devices like therefore, in addition, moreover. You can put it on the board to highlight the words that you need they practice. They can interview each other. They can have game. You can run a game and they start asking, guessing games, asking questions to find the answer. A hot chair, they sit on a chair and the other students ask some questions to find out what's she thinking about, or she, the one on the chair, asks questions from the audience, from the rest of the class. Discussions, role playing, different speaking activities you can run in the class. And in the feedback, you check the new vocabulary, you check the new structure, you check the functions, you check pronunciation, you check stress and intonation while you are getting feedback, and evaluate your students if they need further practice or already they've learned. Another aspect of speaking is tonality. It's good they'll understand the mood of, they know that they can understand the mood of the speaker through tonality. Let me give you an example. My favorite sport is hockey. It's amazing. So when you heard it's amazing, means the speaker loves this sport a lot. But sometimes it said, hey, my favorite sport is hockey. What do you think? It's that it's amazing. So what it means when you hear it from your friend? Ah, that's amazing. Means she loves it a lot, or she just says something that you like it.
No, he doesn't like it.
Mm-hmm. That's right. It's like, oh, it's amazing. Did I say something nice because you like it a lot? But I don't believe in it. That's right. So tonality in the language. That language is very important. What are your challenges in speaking time? The problems like they're worried about making mistakes so they don't talk. The fear of criticism or shyness, that's why they stop talking. Or even they don't have anything to say about the topic. The topic is so weird to them. They have no knowledge. So they have low or uneven participation happens in the class and they don't talk. Or even they use their mother tongue a lot. So, well, what do you think? What are the solutions? If you face these problems, What do you suggest
Solution for what?
for these problems? Can you see this slide? When your students stop talking because the fear of making mistakes, they don't have any ideas. They use their modern tongue a lot. So what do you recommend? How can you help your students? Any ideas?
Have some group work, so they talk to classmates, not in front of the whole class. And or for low participation, say this is part of your participation mark for the final exam. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Very good. Very good. Yes. Group working helps a lot. So use group work and make it easier for your students. Explain about it, talk about it, email them before the class, flip some context, some video clips to your students. So they Google it, Google the topic before coming to the class. Or even you can give them a choice. You give them 2 or 3 topics and say you choose one of these topics and practice in your group. So they have the choice. So they choose the topic that they have more information about it or they have experience about that. Just give them more instructions and explain a little bit. Make it easier for your students. Even you can help them with some words or expressions or instructions on the board and say, okay, you can use these words or you can use these functions. It makes it easier. Show them a sample so they look at the sample and they have ideas. Help your students. Give them prompts, not the answer. Let them try what we help them to learn. And definitely during while stage, we monitor and check if they're on the right track. Storytelling helps them a lot, influence and accuracy both. So let them tell a story in the class. Let them talk about their, for example, last weekend or last summer holiday, or talk about the new books they've learned, they read, or about, or even you can start a story and then say, I want you to complete this story. That's challenging. That's challenging. And you start the story like last summer, I traveled to Paris. And then each student need to add a sentence. Or maybe you start a story and then say, I want you in your groups talk and makes its ends. So they have different ideas and then they discuss in their group, then they share it with the whole class. That would be fun. That would be fun. In lower levels, they add 1 or 2 sentences, but in higher levels, they can even change the story. You can even tell them, everybody knows about Cinderella story. They even read it when they were a child or they watched the movie. And so what if Cinderella hadn't got married with the prince? Hadn't got married to prince, what will have happened? And then they start to discuss and make a different story for Cinderella. Okay, so that helps fluency and accuracy in speaking, and then they get improved in speaking skills. So let's review how to write the lesson plan. For your TESOL assignments, you have to write some lesson plans for conversation that we discussed last session. And it's on YouTube channel for TESOL Canada. Easily you can find it. Also, it's on Canvas. So we can watch it again and again. So for conversation, you write some, depends if you're, what course have you registered? Is it advanced or it's the other one, or even ETSOL? Conversation lesson plans are different from speak integrated skills. There are two formats. For conversation lesson plan, this is the background, okay? You need to write the topic and the material you need to teach that conversation. How do you start introduction? How do you start the activity? Terminal objective and enabling objective. Guys, do you know what's the difference between terminal objective and enabling objectives? What's the difference? If you don't have any ideas, just say no. If yes, please share. What's the difference between terminal objectives and enabling objectives?
Terminal is the benefit after the lesson, what they can do after this lesson.
Okay. Any other ideas? Oh, you want to say? Okay. Terminal, so let me go through it. Terminal objective is the main aim of the lesson. In terminal objective, you say students will be able to do what? Okay, at the end of the session. So terminal objectives talks about what will happen at the end, what is the result of this session. Student will be able to talk about their daily activity, for example. Student will be able to listen to the news and discuss the main points. That is terminal objective, main aim of the session. Enabling objectives, it means what your students need to learn to get to that terminal objective. If they want to talk about their daily activities, what they need to learn some new vocabulary. They need to learn simple present tense. They need to practice the pronunciation and intonation. This is enabling objectives. They need to listen and practice speaking, two skills. So terminal objectives, the main aim of the session. Enabling objectives is the linguistic part of the session. For conversation activity, for example, the conversation, the topic is job interview, okay? So what is terminal objective? Students will be able to interview each other for a job, for working in a school, for example. Enabling objective. Here is the list of the new words. Experience, for example, skills, management, some new words they need to learn. Functions, grammar, present perfect, pronunciation, intonation. You write everything. Listening skills, speaking skills. So that is enabling objective. You have to attach the new words. You have to attach, if you have any worksheets for the new words, And you have to mention what grammar exactly and how you practice that grammar. You have to mention what pronunciation, what phonological practice you have in the class. You have to mention all in detail, okay? And what the skills, is it listening, is it speaking, is it reading, is it writing, what is it? So in conversation, it's definitely listening and speaking. Then you get to process. You write the directions and guides, how you start your class, pre, while, post. What you do in pre-stage, what you do in while stage, and what you do in post. Relevant homework, what you give them as homework to practice, assignment. In appendix, you attach those worksheets you prepare for vocabulary or you prepare for pronunciation. In conversation part, you generally don't teach grammar. You just review the grammar, but not teach because it's conversation. They know the structure, they learn functions and new words. So that is the format for conversation lesson plan. Is it clear for you?
Yes.
Good. Thank you.
Yes, that's clear.
Okay, very good. So right now you have to write your conversation lesson plans. So here's the format. I don't know when is the deadline. I've received the email, but I cannot remember the date. Please check on your Canvas when is the deadline and prepare your conversation lesson plans and send it on time. Next session, we have a webinar on on reading and writing. I will tell you how to write integrated skill lesson plan. It's a bit different. It's not that different, but it's a bit different. Just remember, for conversation in enabling objective, mention the functions, maybe idioms. It depends what level you teach and vocabulary. But grammar, just review. We don't teach grammar in conversation part. Any questions?
Yes, please.
Yes.
This conversation activity assignment, because I'm doing TESOL, so do I write the whole assignment in Chinese? No English
Doing,
at all?
you're going to teach, this is a course for teaching Chinese.
Yes.
Yes, you have to write all of them in Chinese. If you want to teach Chinese, definitely.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure, sure. Any other questions?
No, thank you.